Guru Gobind's open quarrel with the Mughals followed a complex trajectory. From about 1696 he tried to carve out an autonomous domain
around Anandpur, which brought the hostility of the hill chiefs of Himachal Pradesh, who approached the Mughal Faujdar for protection. The siege of Anandpur by a combined force in 1704 compelled Guru Gobind to leave, but Aurangzeb, then busy in Deccan, soon reversed the stand and sought to conciliate the Guru. After Aurangzeb's death, Guru Gobind met Bahadur Shah at Agra in 1707 and he promised to return Anandpur. However, the new emperor had to appease the hill chiefs as well, and therefore continued to postpone his final decision. In the meanwhile, on Transpian of the 18th century to 7th October 1708, Guru Gobind was murdered in a conspiracy, and his mantle then fell on one of his followers, Banda Bahadur, who continued the Sikh revolt. The stage of the contest now shifted to Majha, between the rivers Beas and Ravi, and Doab, between rivers Beas and Sudej, regions, where lived mainly the Jat peasants. Mughal oppression around this time put tremendous pressure on the small zamindars and peasants. Not all of them, it is true, supported Banda Bahadur, whose main supporters were the small Mulgujari Zarnindars of the Jar community. Within a year a large area between the rivers Jamuna and Ravi came under his influence and here he promptly established his own administration, appointed his own Faujdars, Diwan and Kardars, minted a new coin and used his own seal for issuing orders. S2 in 1710, Bahadur Shah proceeded to Punjab, but failed to crush the Sikh revolt. When Farrukhsiyar ascended the throne in 1713, he appointed Abdus Samad Khan the Faujdar of Lahore and gave him special orders to put an end to the Sikh upsurge. The position of Banda Bahadur had also weakened by then to some extent, because of internal dissension within the Sikh community. Although in general the Jat peasants supported him, some of the Jat zamindars went to the Mughal side, Churaman Jak of Agra being a major example. The Khatri business class from around 1710 also went against the Sikh movement, as political stability and security of trade routes were essential to the smooth running of their business. At the same time, when the Mughals introduced the Ijaradari system in Punjab for collecting land revenue, many of the Khatri traders became revenue farmers and this naturally linked their interests to those of the Mughal state. The emperors also tried to take advantage of this internal dissension within the Punjab society, as during the time of Jahandar Shah and Farrukhsiyar, many Khatris were given high positions within the Mughal nobility. Farrukhsiyar tried to use Guru Gobind's widow to drive a wedge between Banda and his Sikh followers. This did not necessarily weaken Banda's movement, as oppressive Khatri Ijaradars often drove desperate Jat peasants into the rebels' camp. But ultimately in 1715 Banda had to surrender to Abdus Samad Khan. He was taken to Delhi along with some of his close followers. In March 1716 all of them were executed. The execution of Banda did not mean the end of Sikh power in Punjab, although there was no one immediately available to take up the leadership. But even in spite of the absence of a centralized leadership, roving bands of Sikh rebels took advantage of the breakdown of imperial control in North India to assert their independence. 28 from Plassey to Partition. Despite the best efforts of Zakaria Khan, who had succeeded his father Abdus Samad Khan as the Mughal governor of Lahore. Even the Afghan invader Ahmad Shah Abdali failed to bring Punjab under his command. His governors were soon thrown out and by September 1761 the Sikhs came to control wide regions of Punjab from rivers Sirlej to Indus. Abdali himself came to Punjab in 1765, but retired soon to Kabul without fighting a single battle. The Sikhs once again established their political power in Punjab once Abdali retired from the Indian scene. But at this stage, power in the Sikh polity became more horizontally structured, as misls, or combinations based on kinship ties, now held territories as units. Whenever a misl conquered new territory, It was distributed among its members according to the nature of contribution made by each member towards the conquest. The highest share obviously went to the chief, but even the lowest soldier got his own parti or a portion of land, which he could enjoy as a co-sharer with absolute freedom. The number of misls thus holding territories in 1770 was more than 60. Above them was the Dal Khalsa with a chosen leader. The misls did unite on occasion, as they did in 1765 against the Afghans. But on the whole, political authority in Punjab remained decentralized and more horizontally dispersed during this whole period until Ranjit Singh, the chief of the Sukha Chakia misl, tried to raise a more centralized Sikh state at the end of the 18th century. After repelling the third Afghan invasion under Abdali's successor Zaman Shah in 1798-99, Ranjit Singh emerged as one of the outstanding Sikh chiefs and conquered Lahore. Leading an army with improved artillery and infantry trained by European officers, by 1809 he had brought under his control large areas in the 5 Doabs of Punjab. By the Treaty of Amritsar in that year the English recognized him as the sole sovereign ruler of Punjab. This gave him the opportunity to round his conquests off by ousting the Afghans from Multan and Kashmir and subduing most of the other Sikh chiefs, many of whom were reduced to the status of tribute-paying vassals. By the time of his death, his authority was recognized in territories between the river Sirlej and the mountain ranges of Ladakh, Karakoram, Hindu Kush and Suleiman. Although Mughal and Afghan rules were displaced from Punjab, the new administration which Ranjit Singh or the other Sikh rulers before him had introduced remained, like the Maratha polity, a careful mix between the Mughal system and local traditions. Continuity of Mughal institutions was remarkable in the organization of administrative divisions, in the nomenclature of officials, as well as in transition of the 18th century 29 tax collection system. Trade and commerce flourished in Punjab because a powerful state under Ranjit Singh provided safe passage to traders and their caravans, but still land revenue remained the main source of income for the state. And although the amount of land revenue collection increased, about 40% of it was alienated as Jagir.ss while in the rest of the territories land revenue was directly collected through Qadars. This penetration of the state stopped at the village level and did not infringe upon the power of the clans and their chiefs. Local traditional hierarchies and the concept of a centralized monarchical state thus existed in a delicately balanced relationship, or in other words, in the dualism between national and local systems of governance. This process of incorporation and adjustment as a part of the construction of a monarchical state could be seen at the cultural level as well, where the Khalsa attempt to construct an exclusive Sikh identity gradually incorporated the non-Khalsa Sikhs or the Sahajdaris as well. 56 At the central level of the Bharat politics also Ranjit Singh maintained a careful balance between the powerful Sikh chiefs on the one hand and on the other freshly recruited military commanders from among the peasants of central Punjab and the non-Punjabi nobles, such as the Dogra Rajputs from Jammu. This delicate balancing game functioned well until Ranjit Singh's death in 1839. Within a decade of his death independent Sikh rule disappeared from Punjab, as struggle for power among the mighty Sikh chiefs and the royal family feuds helped the English to take over without much difficulty, a story we will return to in a short while. In the 18th century, a few smaller states, apart from the larger powers described earlier, had also emerged in North India by taking advantage of the weakness of the Mughal Empire. The Jat kingdom of Bharatpur is an important example of this. The Jats were an agriculturist and pastoral caste inhabiting the Delhi-Mathura region. Caste affinity with their zemindars brought solidarity within the community and they began to revolt against the Mughal state from the time of Jahangir. The first revolt of the Jat at Penzance took place in 1669 and the emperor himself had to proceed to suppress this rebellion. In 1686 the Jats revolted again. This time the Mughal imperial commander Bishan Singh Katwa achieved some success against them, but failed to curb their power completely. In this way,
First, the local Zemindar Gokla and then Rajaram and Choraman J accused the discontent of their peasants against the Mughal state and founded the Jat kingdom at Bharatpur. It was Suraj Mal who consolidated Jat power during his reign. 30 from Plassey to partition Mughal authorities to recognize him. He successfully withstood a siege by Abdali's army and supported the Marathas in the Third Battle of Panipat. However, as for the organization of this rebel polity, the Jat state, although founded with the active support of the peasants, continued to retain its feudal character. The state had to depend on the Zemindars who held both administrative and revenue powers, and their revenue demands sometimes were even higher than those under the Mughal system. Suraj Mal in the 1750s tried to reduce this dependence on the almighty kinsmen and members of his caste, began to drive them off from positions of power, tried to raise the army with foreigners and introduce the Mughal system of revenue collection. But this effort at centralization of power ended with his death in 1763, which was followed by a virtual collapse of the Jat state that stretched at one stage from the Ganga in the east to Agra in the west and from Delhi in the north to Chambal in the south. A couple of small Afghan kingdoms were also established in North India following the weakening of the Mughal Empire. The Afghans, who started migrating to India from the 15th century, were bands of roving warlords, who continually moved from camp to camp. During the early phase of Afghan state formation in India in the 15th-16th century, the Lodi Sultanate remained only a pastoral confederation of tribal lords. In the mid-16th century, Sher Shah Suri during his rule in Delhi, L54D45, transformed this horizontal structure of Afghan polity into a vertical relationship based on military service and direct loyalty to the king. Thus, tribal principles of equality and inherited rights were replaced with the concept of centralized power, subordination and royal prerogatives. But Sher Shah's rule did not last long, and the Afghans continued to operate as a fluid ethnic group of mercenary soldiers in the military labor market of North Landia. 59 in the 18th century. Afghan migration to India increased because of political instability and economic dislocations in Afghanistan. The breakdown of authority in North India that followed Nadir Shah's invasion gave opportunity to another Afghan leader, Ali Muhammad Khan, to establish a petty kingdom of Rohilkhand at the foothills of the Himalayas. But the new kingdom acquired hardly any influence at all, as it suffered heavily at the hands of the neighboring powers, like the Marathas, Jars, Awadh, and later the English. Another independent Afghan kingdom to the east of Delhi in the area around Farrukhabad was established by Ahmad Khan Bangash. Both the Rohillas and Bangash helped Ahmad Shah Abdali during the Third Battle of Panipat, but http transition of the Eighteenth in the century 31 their power declined quickly as Abdali retired from the Indian stage, leaving Najibullah in charge of affairs at Delhi. Apart from the successor states and the rebel states, which came into existence following the weakening of Mughal Empire, there were also a few principalities, like the Rajput kingdoms, Mysore or Travancore, which already enjoyed considerable amount of autonomy in the past and now in the 18th century became completely independent. In the medieval period, a number of roving warrior groups thrived in the North Indian military labor market, from where the Mughal army recruited its soldiers. Gradually, professional specialization was offering these people ethnic identities, Rajput being one of them, as social mobility from peasant to Rajput became a frequent occurrence during this period. It was by 16th-17th century that the Rajputs came to be organized into about 20 major clans, with their chiefs gradually establishing their centralized control over territory, with the patronage of the Mughal emperors following a policy of indirect rule. Since the time of Akbar, different Rajput chiefs were being incorporated into the Mughal structure as Peshkashi Zemindars. They paid an annual tribute, Peshkash, to the Mughal emperor as a mark of subordination, and enjoyed autonomy in matters of internal administration. Many of them were also given high military ranks within the Mughal army and contributed to the strength of the empire, and in return were given help in their effort to consolidate their own control over their kingdoms. Thus, as many of the Rajput chiefs sought to claim centralized authority in their territories, This significantly affected the power relations within the Rajput states based on land ownership. Previously, entitlement to land depended on inherited rights given by the brotherhood of the clan or marriage relations. But now gradually this relationship of corporate egalitarianism, as Norman Jigler calls it, was replaced by the hierarchical principles of service and loyalty that entitled clients to podcast on land. 61. However, the displacement was never complete, as the chiefs and their centralizing policies were continually challenged by local groups or junior lineages from within the clans. When someone rebelled, he was helped by his own immediate kinsmen and their marriage alliances. But rebels when unsuccessful were usually accommodated within the polity, and therefore rebellion happened to be an accepted norm of political behavior. Even in the early 19th century, in a Rajput polity like Sirohi, the Darbar remained a synthesis of the powers of the sovereign and the nobles, and there was not a single noble whose lineage had not rebelled in the recent or distant past against the incumbent ruler. 62 https://
To put it in another way, Rajput polities, to quote Norbert Peabody, were built on webs of crisscrossing, non-exclusive political relationships that produced state formations that were neither founded on the basis of territorial integrity nor absolute and exclusive political loyalties. 63 And it was within this complex matrix of local loyalties, centralizing kingship and clan rivalries that the Rajputs placed their relationship with the Mughals. In the 17th century, during the time of Aurangzeb, the harmonious relationship between the two seemed to break down, though, contrary to popular historical myths, this was not because of religious reactions or Rajput nationalism. Aurangzeb did not discriminate against the Rajput Sardars in matters of recruitment, but he could hardly tolerate the continuous territorial expansion of Mewar under Raj Singh at the expense of other Rajput chieftains, as this would contravene the traditional Mughal policy of balance of power. So to contain him, he began to patronize other neighboring Rajput Sardars. The situation actually began to take an ugly turn when he interfered in the succession question of Mewar. After the death of Rana Jaswant Singh, a son was born to Rani Hari, but Aurangzeb refused to recognize him as the new Rana and instead put up Inder Singh as his own candidate for the position. Such interference was not unprecedented, as in the past the Mughal emperors had used clan rivalries and exerted their right to appoint successors to Rajput states. And now, particularly as Mewar was situated in the strategic route between Agra and Ahmedabad, it could not be left in charge of a child ruler. The question of religious difference did not arise, as the Maharani was prepared to accept Sharia and pay a higher peshkash if her son Ajit Singh's claim was recognized. But when this did not happen, the Radha Sardars, ably helped by Mewar, rose in revolt against the Mughal Empire. Mewar's assistance to the warring chiefs of Mewar was to establish its preeminence in Rajput politics and not so much to further Rajput nationalism, as Satish Chandra has shown. The other Rajput clans, like the Kachwas, Haras, Vakis and the Rathors of Bikani, did not participate in this revolt of 1680–81, some of them even supported the Mughals. Indeed, the movement soon dissipated due to internal rivalries among the Rajput Sardars, each trying to consolidate or expand territorial control at the expense of other clans. 65 In the 18th century, many of them began to assert their independence vis-à-vis the Mughal Empire. Their method was to slowly loosen their ties with Delhi and function as independent states in practice. The most powerful of the Rajput chiefs during this period was Savai Jai Singh of Amba, who ruled in Jaipur from transition of the 18th century 1743 and also played a significant role in Mughal politics. In the second half of the 18th century, the Rajput polities had to face constant depredations of the Marathas and Afghans, although none of them succeeded in permanently subjugating the region. In South India, the emergence of Mysore as a significant power in the mid-18th century was most spectacular. Originally a viceroyalty under the Vijayanagara Empire in the 16th century, Mysore was gradually transformed into an autonomous principality by the Vodaya dynasty. Its centralized military power began to increase from the late 17th century under Chikkaraja Vodaya, 1672 to 1766, but it reached its real period of glory under Hyder Ali. A man of humble origin, Hyder had started his career as a junior officer in the Mysore army and gradually rose to prominence. By 1761 he took over political power in Mysore by ousting the corrupt Dalui Prime Minister, Nanjaraj, who had in the meanwhile usurped real power in the kingdom by reducing the Vodaya king into a mere titular head. Hyder modernized his army with French experts, who trained an efficient infantry and artillery and infused European discipline into the Mysore army. It was organized on a European model through the system of Risala, with a clear chain of command going up to the ruler. Each Risala had a fixed number of soldiers, with provision for weaponry and modes of transport and a commander appointed directly by Hyder himself. His power was further consolidated by the subjugation of the local warrior chiefs or hereditary overlords like Deshmukhs and Palgars, Polygars, who had until then complete mastery over the countryside through their control over agricultural surpluses and local temples. Hyder, and later his son Tipu Sultan, introduced the system of imposing land taxes directly on the peasants and collecting them through salaried officials and in cash, thus enhancing enormously the resource base of the state. This land revenue system was based on detailed survey and classification of land. Sometimes fixed rents and sometimes a share of the produce were collected from different categories of land, such as wet or dry lands, the rate of rent varying according to the productivity of soil. It did not completely dispense with the Mughal institution of Jagir, but restricted it to a very small proportion of the available land. 67 Bertenstein has called Tipu's revenue system a form of military fiscalism, where taxes were collected from a wide base directly by state officials in order to mobilize resources to build up and maintain a large army. This was therefore part of a Polyrikaje project to establish centralized military hegemony by eliminating the intermediaries who were co-sharers of power in a previous segmentary state under the Vijayanagara Empire. 68 Tipu's state, in order to expand its resource base, provided encouragement for the development of agriculture, such as tax remission for reclamation of wasteland, and tried to protect the peasants from the rapacity of tax collectors. Even his arch-enemies had to concede that his country was the best cultivated and its population the most flourishing in India. 69 Tipu was also interested in modernizing the agricultural economy, by repairing old irrigation systems and constructing new ones, by promoting agricultural manufacturing and introducing cericalure in Mysore. He sent ambassadors to France to bring in European technology, went on to build a navy, with ambition to participate in oceanic trade. He launched in 1793 what can be described as a state commercial corporation, with plans to set up factories outside Mysore. In course of time, Mysore state began to participate in a lucrative trade in valuable goods like sandalwood, rice, silk, coconut, sulfur, etc., and established 30 trading centers in and outside Mysore in other parts of western India and overseas like Muscat. But his plans of modernization went far beyond his resources, and therefore, Mysore remained, as Irfan Habib argues, far away from a real opening to modern civilization. The state of Mysore under Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan was involved in establishing a centralized military hegemony. Its territorial ambitions and trading interests got it engaged in a state of constant warfare, which overshadowed all other aspects of its history during this period. Hyder Ali had invaded and annexed Malabar and Calicut in 1766, thus expanding the frontiers of Mysore significantly. On the other hand, the boundaries of the Maratha kingdom extended over the coastal areas of Konkan and Malabar, which made conflict with Mysore inevitable. There was also conflict with the other powers in the region, like Hyderabad and then the English, on whom Hyder Ali inflicted a heavy defeat near Madras in 1769. After his death in 1782, his son Tipu Sultan followed his father's policies. His rule came to an end with a defeat at the hands of the English in 1799. He died defending his capital Srirangapatnam. We shall return to that story shortly, but before that it is important to remember that in a significant way Tipu's reign represented a discontinuity in 18th century Indian politics, as his kingship, argues Kate Brittlebank, 1997, was rooted firmly in a strong regional tradition. Unlike other 18th century states which did not challenge the political legitimacy of the Mughal emperor, in a symbolic gesture to proclaim his independence, Tipu issued coins without any reference to the Mughal emperor, and instead of Emperor Shah Alam's name he inserted his own name in the Koba, Friday sermons at the mosques. Finally, he sought a sanad from the Ottoman Caliph to legitimize his rule. But he too did not completely sever links with the Mughal monarch, who still commanded respect in the subcontinent. Being a realist, as he was, Tipu recognized Mughal authority when it suited him and defied it when it did not. Further south, the southernmost state of Travancore had always maintained its independence from Mughal rule. It gained in importance after 1729 when its king Meranda Verma started expanding his dominions with the help of a strong and modern army trained along western lines and equipped with modern weapons. The Dutch were ousted from the region, the English were made to accept his terms of trade, local feudal chiefs were suppressed, and smaller principalities governed by collateral branches of the royal family were taken over. By the beginning of the 1740s Verma had constructed a powerful bureaucratic state, which required control over larger resources. He resolved this problem by proclaiming a royal monopoly, first on pepper trade and then on all trade in the prosperous Malabar coast. Some of the profit that the state earned in this way was ploughed back into the community through development of irrigation, transport and communication systems and various other charities. In view of recent researches, this measure in itself does not seem to be a major departure from existing political convention. Although Travancore was not formally within the Mughal system, royal and noble trade was becoming an established Mughal tradition since the 17th century. 73 Travancore withstood the shock of a Masurian invasion in I-766 and under Marthanda Verma's successor Rama Verma its capital became a center of scholarship and art. In his death towards the closing years of the 18th century the region lost its former glory and soon succumbed to British pressure, accepting a resident in 1800. However, the internal social organization of the state, marked by the dominance of the Nair community in administration, landholding and social spheres continued for another 50 years, yielding to the forces of change in the second half of the 19th century. 74 The major characteristic of 18th century India was therefore the weakening of the centralized Mughal Empire and a dispersal of political power across the regions. There was in other words, a transformation of the polity, rather than complete collapse. 75 The symbols of Mughal authority were still recognized. The Mughal http without any reference to the Mughal emperor, and instead of Emperor Shah Alam's name, the system also continued, although in some areas its content was substantially changed. Talking about Mughal Bengal, Richard Ayton concludes that, even while central power in Delhi declined, rendering Bengal effectively independent from the second decade of the 18th century on, the ideological and bureaucratic structure of Mughal imperialism continued to expand in the Bengal Delta. 76 But although the successor states continued Mughal institutions and perhaps also inherited some of their weaknesses, there were also indications of significant innovation and improvement both in terms of political rituals and insignia, as also in perfecting mechanisms of resource extraction from agriculture and trade. At a political level, all these states continually made adjustments between concepts of centralized kingship and local loyalties, between prebend lordship and hereditary rights, or in more general terms, between centripetal and centrifugal tendencies. This political heterogeneity also favored the flourishing of a diverse cultural life, where religious strife was not a part of ordinary social life despite some tension between the Shia and Sunni Muslims in Awadh and where side by side with orthodoxy, there were also plebeian, syncretistic and rationalist schools of thought, which were patronized by the regional rulers. Thus the devotional religion of Vaishnavism flourished in Bengal, the Firangi Mahal blossomed in Lucknow as a rationalist school of Islamic thought, and even after the decline of its main center at Bijapur the Deccani Sufi tradition and its literary culture survived in Hyderabad and Erkot. 79 If Tipu Sultan found in Islam an enduring ideology of power, he was equally patronizing towards the Hindu religious institutions like the Sringeri Math and other Hindu shrines. On the economic side, the 18th century was not a period of total stagnation either, as there had been considerable regional variations. Sarish Chandra, 1991, has talked about the resilience of the economy, as trade, both internal and external, continued without disruption and even prospered. There was now an expanding commercial economy and the revenue farmers and merchants with money power increased their political influence. Indigenous bankers handled considerable amounts of cash and operated extensive financial networks across the country to transfer credit through hundis. And as one theory would have it, they were now supposedly favoring the regional elite, rather than the central Mughal authority. 81 There was, in other words, creation of new wealth and social power in the provinces, which, as C.A. Bailey has argued, resulted in the decline of the centralized Mughal power. 82 There is one http significant point that emerges from the recent historiography of 18th century India that there were regions with considerable amounts of resources, which actually attracted the English and other European traders and triggered off a competition among them for mastery over the subcontinent.